This is the 415ers podcast brought to you by the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network with 95.7 The Game. That's Mark Randy. My name is Evan Giddings. We're coming at you twice a week. Please check us out on the Odyssey app, which you can download, rate to us, subscribe to us there. Also, check us out on the 95.7 The Game YouTube channel. Give that a subscribe while you are there as well. The third part of this, of course, in this quarterback conversation, we've discussed the non-trade market for Trey Lance allegedly over this offseason, according to Adam Schefter. He was on the Pat McAfee show. And, of course, he also said that Sam Darnold had the edge over Trey Lance in line for that second quarterback position. But the biggest news, maybe I would say arguably the most important news, is that the 49ers are optimistic that Brock Purdy will play week one. And that is really why we're having the conversation about the backup and the third guy, because it is important. But at the end of the day, Mark, if you got your QB1 and you believe him to be that dude, everything else will fall into place, and it really doesn't matter.
Yeah, he said he's just continuing to check off all the right boxes as time passes, which is great news for the 49ers. And I know they are in a little bit of a down period right now, but I'm sure Brock Purdy is still checking in with Niners, medical personnel and everyone, and he's, progressing throwing the football. You remember at the end of mandatory minicamp is when he was actually picking up and throwing a football before. Before that, it was just a towel going through the motion, but he is throwing a football now. And it's great news that after the fact that he's been throwing an actual football. Now, again, it hasn't been like letting it go 40, 50 yards down the field. But the fact that he's been throwing footballs now and hasn't had any sort of setback, that things still seem to be going well, this seems to me to be a pretty big check mark. We're a couple of weeks out from the end of minicamp now, and you haven't heard any bad news regarding that. So obviously there's going to be still a number of hurdles for him to clear, specifically when training camp gets underway. Is he going to get enough practice time in training camp, actual practice time where he's not limited in any way for him to feel comfortable and for the 49ers to feel comfortable running him out there week one, or potentially into the preseason as well? But the fact that there's been no setbacks, at least reported that we know at all, after him throwing footballs for the first time, seems like a pretty big benchmark and a pretty big hurdle for him to clear. So good news for the 49ers regarding Brock Purdy. Adam Schefter, of course, is very plugged into all of this. So the fact that he hasn't heard anything other than everything is going well right now, I think speaks to the fact that the 49ers really do expect him to be ready for week one, which, considering how this offseason began, is wild. I mean, you and I I 100% didn't really expect him to play week one. But the fact that it seems like we're headed in that direction is just great news for the 49ers.
Yeah, and I wonder how Kyle Shanahan will kind of reacclimate him to both the system as well as the team, because look, I mean, you can study as much tape as you want. You can dig into the playbook and put your nose in it as much as you'd like. But Brock Purdy's still going to have to get those live reps. He's still going to need those bullets. And going back to last season, I believe one of the big reasons why Trey Lance was the day one starter, even with Jimmy Garoppolo on the roster, and even Brock Purdy to some extent, is because Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have a ramp-up period. He didn't have an offseason because he was delayed in the timing in which he chose to get his surgery. Brock Purdy isn't exactly on the same timeline, but there is going to be a very condensed offseason when it comes to throwing and live action for Brock Purdy. So how quickly can he get up to speed is the most important part of training camp and then in the preseason for him. And I'm just curious to see how Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers athletic training staff are going to manage Brock Purdy, because he is ultimately important. And the fact that he's online to play in week one, I'm looking forward to seeing if it's going to be primarily a run-first offense, if they're going to allow him to let it rip the way we saw them entrust him with the offense, immediately becoming the starter last season. So I'm not necessarily, I guess, worried about the health now. It feels like he's cleared every single hurdle he has to, and that is reason to believe he'll be healthy for week one. But how much, as far as the football is concerned, will he be ready for? Because he's not going to have a long off season, and he's not going to have much time once he gets back and ready to throw to get ready for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
I don't think that's much of a concern for me. I don't think that situation will come up. I think the 49ers are in a place where it'll probably be a run heavy offense week one, but not more than it normally is. I think it'll be the normal Kyle Shanahan 49ers offense. And if the Niners are in a situation where perhaps they feel a little uncomfortable with Brock Purdy's ability to do everything in the playbook for week one, I don't think they'll start him. I don't think they're ready to take a risk at the quarterback position, particularly for the guy that they obviously love more than any of the others at the quarterback position. I think they will bite the bullet and, swallow one Sam Darnold, one Trey Lance start just to make sure that they have Brock Purdy completely ready and able to do everything in the playbook. If there are any doubts, I think, in their mind about his ability to throw the ball down the field, to push it down the field 30, 40 yards, I don't think they're going to start him. Maybe I'm assuming incorrectly, and maybe the 49ers will put someone out there who isn't 100% ready, or at least that they still have some questions about. I understand your concern. I just don't think that situation will come to pass because I think the 49ers are smart enough to not do that, to hold him out if there are still a little bit of maybe dangling concerns as he works his way back.
No, I'm not talking about his arm. What I'm talking about is the speed of football and how quickly that Brock Purdy is going to be ready for game action. And they'll go through their evaluations and figure out if he's up to speed, if he's still calculating defenses at the rate that he was doing last season. But I just feel like Brock Purdy did benefit last year from getting in, immersing himself, and having an entire offseason after being selected in the 7th round to prepare. And because he hasn't been able to throw, I just don't know how that's going to affect him once he gets in the game. I think he'll pass all the tests. He's gonna, physically be all good to go. I don't think it's a question of can he rip it 40 yards, but does he know to go? Where does he know to go with the football in a situation like that immediately after being hurt? Is he going to trust his arm to let it rip for 40 yards on those first couple of passes? We'll never find out, of course, until we see it. But I just wonder how much of those things will linger for Brock Purdy because he has an injury affected and then a condensed offseason.
I'm just imagining Brock Purdy like running to the sideline after he misses Brandon Ayuk streaking wide open 30 yards down the field, and he said he dumped it off to McCaffrey in the flat. And Shanahan pulls him aside like, "Yo, what the hell? We had Ayuk wide open. It would have been a walk-in touchdown. What's going on?" And Purdy just says, sorry, coach. It's just right back after the injury. I don't really trust myself to throw it down the field yet." Shanahan would just absolutely rip him a new one. So I don't really think that's an option. I understand where you're coming from, and maybe there is the moment of hesitation in Brock Purdy's mind. I'm not so sure. I don't think that's something Shanahan really considers. I think he thinks if you're ready physically, you pass all the physical tests, you're ready to go, I'm putting you out there. And if you don't make the throw you should, you're in trouble. And I'm going to be upset at you. Maybe that does happen in Brock Purdy's mind. I don't think it's something that Shanahan really even considers.
So, what are the concerns then?
I guess the concerns would be that Trey or that Brock Purdy is feeling a little. I don't know. He's questioning his arm, his ability immediately coming back. I will say, what's the way to get that back? I think by going out there and playing. So again, I think if he's physically ready and he's 100%, he passed all the doctor's tests. There's absolutely nothing holding him back potentially besides his own doubt. It's natural. I mean, you remember what Clay Thompson went through after a couple of major injuries, and I'm not saying this is on the same level as that, but Clay Thompson couldn't really play pickup basketball all offseason because he hadn't played in so long and he was worried about re-injuring himself. I know that's not the same thing at all, but maybe that's what Brock Purdy is feeling like. But the way you get over those things is by playing. So I think if he's physically ready, that's all the 49ers are worried about, and they'll throw him out there.
Well, yeah, they will throw him out there because he's their best option too, and that's
True.
why he's going to be there week one. But I would equate it more to a pitcher coming off of Tommy John surgery that is going to look good, but again, with an absence of throwing for such a long period of time, I just feel like there's going to be some connectivity from, brain to brawn that might not be there at the beginning. That is not something you can really evaluate until you see him in the game. That would be the situation that I'm worried about. It's not being afraid or not being willing to throw it 40 yards to an open Brandon Ayuk, but it's that not being in the foxhole for such a long period of time and not getting a full training camp, not getting a full preseason means that your preseason is essentially week one. And there might be some mistakes and there might be some setbacks. But again, he's the best option for the 49ers, and that's why he's going to be out there.
Quick question then for you. September 10th, week one, Niners at Steelers. Niners are -2.5. Does this tell me you're taking Steelers plus 2.5? Get in before the line changes with this Brock Purdy question, huh?
The reason I would take the plus 2.5 is because the 49ers are on the road week one against a Steelers team that I think is going to be better than a lot of people believe, not because of the quarterback. But we can discuss that on a future episode. That's going to wrap things up for this one on the 415ers. Appreciate you tuning in 2 times a week on the Odyssey Sports Podcast Network with 95.7 The Game. Please download the Odyssey app on your way out. Rate us, subscribe to us there. Also check us out on YouTube. That is Mark Rainey. I'm Evan Giddings. We'll be back next week, next Tuesday. In the meantime, enjoy the rest of your week and weekend, and we'll talk to you next time.